Hey everyone, this is Nick from the Botch Pit. Today, we're going to be talking about the Barrett Commission, a compact for Hunter the Vigil. They are also known as the Legacy of Power. As a terminology reminder, compacts are second-tier hunter organizations, setting them above bands of hunters, called cells, and below conspiracies, which are the largest types of hunter organizations. The source used for this broadcast was Night Stalkers, a source book for Hunter the Vigil. This is the only book the Barrett Commission appears in. Complexity on organization. The Barrett Commission formed not as a new idea, only the most recent expression of an old, essential one. Monsters have permeated the halls of power, and only those who walk such halls can remove them. The Barrett Commission protects the populace from vampires and other social monsters that seek to influence the upper tier for their own twisted purposes. The Commission has representatives within government, corporations, hospital boards, the military, and so on. In order to evict the supernatural threat lurking around the arterial veins of commerce and government, you have to be there with them. They protect the world's assets, trusting their efforts trickle down to the average citizen. Only the driven are invited into the Commission. They are composed of men and women who claw, scrape, and work their way to the top, and very much plan to stay there. The inherently wealthy, those silver spoon suckers, try to tame the beasts, cutting deals and inviting parasites into their fold. As such, only the driven are invited into the Commission. Everyone else is a security risk. The history of the Barrett Commission. Several organizations have been formed and disbanded throughout the ages among the educated and the affluent. A shadow senate in Rome, special tribunals in Istanbul, the American Philosophical Society and Chestnut Street Compact in the post-revolutionary Philadelphia, and of course, existing conspiracies like Task Force Valkyrie and the Chiron Group. The Barrett Commission takes its name from one of three founding members, Revolutionary Colonel Sean Barrett. The other two founding members are Alfred Bredelmeier, landowner and banker, and Elizabeth Libby Duckett, Alfred's niece. On behalf of President John Adams, Colonel Barrett investigated some curious bookkeeping surrounding the office of the Governor of Delaware. Barrett performed the investigation over the course of many months, along with Bredelmeier and Duckett. Corruption was not unknown, but it was peculiar that a certain flow of money had been set to bypass the governor. Upon tracking this cash flow, at its end, they found a human creature, fat like a tick, and bloated like a tumor, a blood-hungry thing whose gluttony was only matched by its greed. The monster was apparently associated with several important families within Dover for generations. The trio eviscerated the creature and burned down the rotten estate it had built with the funds secured by these important traitorous families. Colonel Barrett rode back to the District of Columbia the following night, sickened and convinced President Adams needed to intercept this happening elsewhere. However, mysterious circumstances arose among the trio following this event. First of all, Colonel Barrett's ride was cut short in Baltimore by a mysterious, unknown gunman. The results of his findings never reached Washington. At a pub, Bredelmeier stated, most likely under the influence, that upon his findings, he wanted to investigate every major family from Boston to Savannah. Within a fortnight, he was found dead, bled out from a wound in the neck. However, due to good fortune, ignorance of the time, or perhaps not speaking openly of the event, Elizabeth lived. It was her diaries and letters that would recall Colonel Barrett's good name, and her discretion which survives their shared mission into the modern era. The story of how and why the compact started is still told to new members, and even if some details are forgotten, the moral remains clear: trust no one. Due to this history, the hunters of the Commission no longer pursued making their compact official. This compact still exists today, a secret cabal of the powerful and elite. They operate in modern nights, as they have all along, as a group of powerful individuals united in silence to root out the parasites attached to the world's most gainful institutions. Organization of Compact. The Barrett Commission appears deceivingly widespread, but their numbers aren't nearly as impressive as their influence suggests. For all the good the Commission is capable of, loyalty always comes under fire. In an organization of powerful people, there will always be one or two individuals who believe they can profit from the deal with the devil. This means that all members of the compact should be held to agonizing standards of scrutiny. Every commissioner is likely to have a skeleton or two in their closet and are vulnerable to blackmail and extortion. Some strange bedfellows arise, and before long, another arm of the organization needs to be amputated from the infection. Personal greed will always be the greatest stumbling block of the Commission, and second only to vampires. Their greatest enemy remains their peers. The Commission is all about fighting smart. Their battlegrounds are boardrooms, not the streets. By applying a little bit of pressure all over, it only takes the gentlest push to topple a monster's house of cards that has risen too high. Divisions. There are three primary divisions within the Barrett Commission. These are as much natural cliques as they are imposed divisions of labor. The suits. The suits are the big business arm of the Commission, with their battlefield being the Forbes 500 list. Historically, the suits started out as the smallest branch of the Barrett Commission, but business interests swaying both the government and military has boosted the interest and power of the division. The Quorum. The Quorum is a division that comes straight from Washington, London, etc. Lobbyists, representatives, clerks, even a senator or two all comprise the Quorum. The Quorum circles the limelight, but they don't claim it. They would rather orchestrate great plans from the safety of the shadows, thus are able to hide in plain sight. The Five Stars. The Five Stars are a small but growing segment of military brass among the Commission, rather a renewed development. Military involvement was key in the formation of the organization, and at one time most politicians were military men. With the reinvigoration of the Five Stars, the methods the suits and Quorum have grown accustomed to are being challenged by less well-off old soldiers who built their careers on facing problems head-on. Status. The Barrett Commission gains status by having status. The bigger you are outside the compact, the more influence you bring with you within the compact. They are unique as a group in that someone with enough money and power can buy their way to the upper echelons on their first day of membership. However, experience in the compact will always beat out those who buy their way in. 1 dot signifies you've been brought into the fold, but are most likely only aware of your immediate peers. You know the Commission goes beyond your local office, but have little idea of the full scope. You gained an additional stipend in order to help the Commission, 1 additional dot in resources to a maximum of 5. If you already have resources at the maximum level, there is no replacement reward. 3 dots signifies you've risen above the enlightened chaff. Swimming with the sharks, you've managed to come out of the pool alive. It's time for you to see what lies behind the curtain. You gain a 3 dot mentor. If you already have a mentor at this level, you may gain an additional mentor at this level, or additional dots in this merit to a maximum of 5. 5 dots indicate you have risen to a position of leadership in a compact composed almost entirely of leaders. This is not a position that comes lightly. You have available an almost limitless source of resources, information, and assets, as well as a much wider social net. You gain 2 additional points in contacts within the fields of government, corporations, or military. The Barrett Commission vs. the World of Darkness. The Barrett Commission vs. Vampire the Requiem. This compact predominantly hunts vampires, because it's vampires that always seem to hide in plain sight, a tumor that conceals its malignancy, and as it does so, develops its own leeching blood flow. Yes, if the Commission finds other monsters hiding in the shadows of power, they'll commit to action. But as a compact, it's the depredations of the power-hungry dead that consume their greatest efforts and knowledge. The purpose of the Commission is simple: to prevent vampires from gaining control of US government and business. This is easier said than done, since vampires have wealth and connections going back decades, if not centuries. The Barrett Commission vs. Hunter the Vigil. As mentioned before, one of the greatest enemies of the Barrett Commission is the Barrett Commission itself, as loyalties fade when power rears its head. As an aside, due to occupying similar space to both Task Force Valkyrie and the Chiron Group Conspiracies. There are bound to be altercations and agreements between them. Terminology-wise, Task Force Valkyrie is a conspiracy of hunters that exists as a top-secret United States government agency dedicated to tracking down and removing all traces of the unexplainable. The Chiron Group is a conspiracy of hunters that exist as a company dedicated to capturing and experimenting on dark monsters to benefit their own technology and investments. Both of these conspiracies, in addition to a myriad of additional compacts, such as the Ashwood Abbey, could obviously run into one another fairly easily. Due to the nature of the Barrett Commission teetering on moral upbringing, they could either be the greatest allies or the most traitorous enemies. Also, in terms of scale, the Barrett Commission is a compact of highly influential individuals. However, it is incredibly small. Conspiracies, due to their sheer size, could hold up against them, even with lower influence. Conclusion. So, that's the Barrett Commission. Again, due to them appearing in only one book for just a few pages, this broadcast doesn't have the same weight as those out of the core book. However, I hope that from this broadcast, you are able to find some instances where you can apply them to your Vampire the Requiem story, or as an ally or antagonist in Hunter the Vigil. Also, going forward, we're going to examine more of these lesser-known compacts and conspiracies as we await the final release of Hunter the Vigil 2nd edition. After reading parts of the backer PDF, I can't go ahead with anything out of the core book at this time, so I figured let's take this opportunity to examine those that some people might not have heard of before. This has been Nick from the Botch Pit. Thank you.